from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Brown-haired albino was unbuttoning his coat, his eyes on Cermak, who was shaking hands with Roosevelt.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Tony. A lovely gesture.
I just wanted to remind you and your administration that you have my full and enthusiastic support.
The albino assassin was reaching under his coat, but I grabbed his arm and pulled it away, and his hand came back empty, the gun still under his arm as his coat flapped. I buried a fist in his belly and doubled him over. And when he came up, the snout of my 9mm stared him in the face.
You got you this time, fucker!
Sounded like firecrackers, and the muzzle flash above the crowd looked like fireworks, but this was something else. Blurred figures in the crowd were falling, and a stubby, bushy-haired brown little man in a white shirt standing up on a bench was swarmed like a come-to-Jesus meeting got out of hand. Meanwhile, the ex-blonde was pulling away, and I swung at him, and he went down, unconscious, as the mass of people around us were heading to my right. I moved against the tide towards Cermak, pushing, shoving, and got to that touring car where Miller and Lang were crouched over the fallen Cermak, red spreading from his left side under his unbuttoned suit coat.
Where? Where were the goddamn bodyguards?
I had the blonde, Your Honor. He didn't fire the round. Some bushy-haired little creep.
This was no time to tell him he'd been shot by his son-in-law's gardener.
What the hell? They got me after all, Heller.
The crowd was turning into a mob. Miller, Lang, and I were hovering over Cermak in the quiet of the storm.
Heller, get your people out of the way. We need to move the president and his vehicle out of here. For Christ's sakes, Cermak's been shot. Take him with you. Get him to a hospital.
Roosevelt, sitting in back, heard me.
Put Tony in here and get us the hell out.
The shooter's big revolver was clicking on an empty chamber now. But that must have had an 8-round rod, as I found myself on a battlefield where bleeding audience members wandered like wounded warriors, helped by their dazed loved ones.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Robservations with Robert Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, the perhaps never-to-be-defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi. Robert Meyer Burnett. I'm, of course, Robcasting you from right here in the Robservatory. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 1056. You know, I love it when a plan comes together, as they used to say on the A-Team. I love seeing the era that we're living through now. And I love it when a piece of entertainment, I mean, look, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'm not a political commentator, although I think all art delves into politics. So to say you don't want to talk about politics when you're talking about movies or comics seems foolish to me, because it's all part of the same continuum. It's all a part of storytelling. It's all a part of the human experience. And remember, the best fiction is the most truthful. But anyway, I love seeing when people get excited, especially when I see our community of ne'er-do-wells, film Twitter, nerds, imagination connoisseurs. Call us what you want. It's great to see people getting excited about something, and when the anticipation leads into something, and a piece of entertainment comes out, whether it's a movie, whether it's an album, whether it's a television show, like Alien Earth. Apparently we're getting banger after banger after banger lately, and we don't have to sit there and complain and bitch and moan. We can talk about or puzzle over. I mean, my God, how great is it to see all of these YouTube reviews and reactions and explanations of everybody right after seeing it is delving into the movie Weapons, Zach Cregger's second film. Again, the third auteurist vision coming out from Warner Brothers. We had Companion, which is a banger, and I maintain it should have made at least $50 million. That movie was woefully underutilized. Not underutilized, it was underserved by the marketing department at Warner Brothers. I don't know what a great time, but auteurist, part of that, the Cregger Mafia, everybody involved in that. Then, of course, we had Ryan Coogler's Sinners that I can't get enough of. I can't tell you how many times I've dipped into it just on HBO Max when I have the 4K Steelbook right here. But as everybody who collects movies can attest, why go down to your collection if it's on TV? No. For the full experience with the music and the sound, I want to crank it up. But I'm just saying, if it's at your fingertips and I've got nothing to do, I'll just watch Sinners. Again, Ryan Coogler writing and directing, and now we come to it at last. Friday, August 8th, the official opening day. Yesterday was a preview day of Zach Cregger's Weapons, and I am seeing the internet chock-a-block full of people puzzling over it, people musing over it, people discussing it, but they're excited about it. An original horror film from a new voice, a man who transitioned from comedy, gave us the banger of Barbarian. Please, by the way, people, please license that shit out to Second Sight so I can get some Second Sight goodness. I mean, look what they did for the coffee table, man. I mean, look at this beautiful box set. I want to see a Barbarian box set just like this. And why don't we have it? The first physical media that should always be considered to be licensed out is horror, because the horror community will buy it. I mean, hello, David Pryor's The Empty Man. Hello, it's like the Charlie Brown Christmas when he's waiting to get Christmas cards. He opens up his mailbox. Hello in there, and it echoes back. I feel that way about Empty Man and Barbarian. I mean, after Weapons, somebody's missing out. Get that physical media out stat. Give it to a boutique label. Give it to Arrow. Give it to Second Sight. Give it to Shout or Scream. Give it to somebody. Right? The fact that Weapons came out and you can't get Barbarian on physical media, someone is sleeping on the job. Hire somebody else. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, everybody's excited about Weapons. I'm going to get into it because I have many thoughts. But before I get there, I've got a great article to read, but I do have a couple of letters I want to share, and then I got more letters to share at the end. But I got a letter. I can't let this letter go because it's too good. It's too good of a letter. And it comes from a lady, a woman, a girl, I don't know. Her name's Melissa McCracken. I mean, does she walk around, does she look in the mirror in the morning and go, unleash the McCracken? I know, if you have to be, if you're not a Clash of the Titans fan, it won't make any difference to you. But if you are, unleash the McCracken. And I'm going to right here, because this is a great, great, great letter. But I'll let you, as always, be the judge of it. This comes to us from Melissa McCracken. Hi, Rob. I've been an avid consumer. Let me start again. Melissa deserves better than this. Hi, Rob. I've been an avid connoisseur of your verisimilitude. Boy, you know what? If I heard her whisper that would be the end of me. I've been an avid connoisseur of your verisimilitude for some time now, and of imagination, my entire life. I realized something while watching your Star Trek deep dive with Mr. Zynos Amaro, which was brilliant, by the way. Fascinating start to finish. I've ordered his book. As you should. His book is Equimedian, and you can get it on Amazon right now, which is brilliant, by the way. I've ordered his book. You mentioned you like the female perspective on Trek, and as I am a female, I thought I'd share some thoughts and realizations. What I've realized is that Star Trek may have finally solved the age-old thought experiment of Theseus's ship. It solved it for me. I've been watching Star Trek since I was about 5. Hugh and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay because that's when I started watching it. I started TNG with my dad. I don't watch a lot of TV, but Star Trek is my go-to. There are some eras of life where you go back to what you know. For me, those eras have recently been pregnancy and having children. I got through the first go-round by watching old faithful Star Trek. Then, with my second child, I realized I hadn't watched Discovery. What a treat for me to finally have some new Star Trek to watch right when I needed it. And you know my horror as I tried to navigate through that mess. At first, of course, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. All shows go through growing pains in the first season or so. Okay, they changed up the Klingons. I can live with that. Trill have changed. Preference vote. TNG Trill. That didn't stop me from loving DS9. Dax is a favorite character. Klingons have been changed before, no big deal. By the third season, I was beyond done. I decided to treat it as Nemesis and pretend that it didn't exist. On to strange new worlds. Ouch. I wanted to love it. She wrote ouch, I didn't write ouch. I wanted to love it, but something was very off about it. I stopped watching after the space musical, though what did it in for me was Spock's romance and idiocy. Then Picard. I was finished with morning sickness, but I wanted to throw up. I agree Terry saved it, but my goodness, those first seasons were hard. I seriously started to wonder if motherhood and pregnancy had warped my brain beyond recognition. I'm a Star Trek lover. I've been a Star Trek lover for as long as I can remember. I can't get into this new stuff. This says Star Trek, but it's not. People online are saying, it's great. What am I missing? Then I went on to watch through all of the older Trek I know and love. I determined it's not me. It's Theseus's ship. If you decide to preserve a ship for posterity, and you painstakingly replace parts board by board over the years, eventually you've replaced every piece of the original ship. A Spock here, a Gorn there. Look, they're still there. What's the problem? Is it still the same ship? Some would argue that it is. Kurtzman Trek would argue that it is. It certainly looks like the old ship. There's a sign right there telling us all about it. The script is in the same fashion as the era of the ship. It gathers a crowd. Off to the side is a man with a bit of wood. He's telling people the story of the heroic ship, the way it changed the course of history. He has a tiny fragment of the original ship. Perhaps a hero of old touched this very fragment as he was carried out to meet with fate. What do people want to touch? The replica of that shard of wood? There's a difference. Star Trek is a vessel of existential abstraction. Yes, there are shows that lead you to think, to ask questions, but what other show has taken so many of us, and so many generations, by the hand and said, look into the void. You'll be okay. Humanity will be okay. In fact, our survival depends on the looking. I think many of us can comprehend those other deep-thinking offerings only because Star Trek showed us that we can and we must. What other show can a 5-year-old girl watch with her father and both child and adult learn the wonder and necessity of questioning? Yes, these new Trek vessels appear seaworthy. They can navigate a streaming service, no doubt about it. But my sense of wonder steps 1 foot on deck and shudders in fear. Wonder is a VIP passenger and knows when it's being taken for a ride. One, it won't survive. Let the replica ship take us somewhere heroic or discover new territory, and then it will be granted the awe. Then, in years to come, someone will carry a fragment with them to remember what wonder means. That's Star Trek. I'm so sad that my children, both girls by the way, probably won't have a Star Trek thought vessel for their generation. They'll watch the old shows with me before they can see the chipped paint. Their sense of wonder is still robust and ready for adventure. And for me, I'm stepping foot into the Star Trek literary world thanks to you, though I'm really worried about when I get to the coda now. Oh, that's a long way off. You don't have to worry about that. I also wanted to say I was sad to see you mention that you probably wouldn't have much additional Star Trek commentary. I get it. Perhaps there's no sense in beating a dead ship and it's hard to dwell on what's lost. But this is a light that is fading, and I'm having a hard time watching it wink out. I like to trust the universe. Maybe this is the Trek the next generation needs. I just don't see it. So I wanted to say from one Trek lover to another, I don't think we should go gentle into that good night. For the coming generation, I think we should rage against the dying of the light. I don't know what that should look like, but I do know that something deeper is being lost. Not fans losing their old familiarity. There is a deep layer that we are losing, and I think it's important that we not forget that. Thank you for keeping it as a relevant topic. I fervently believe that it is. Melissa. Gosh, Melissa, where have you been all my life? I wish I could have met a girl like you when I was a young man. No, you know, I did a cursory Google search. Whenever somebody writes in a letter or something that I'm taken by or particularly impressed with, I did a Google search, and I'm wondering, I believe there is a Melissa McCracken who lives on the East Coast who is quite the artist, and striking paintings, really. I wonder if that's you. I can only imagine that it might be, because those paintings also contain in them a sense of not just color and design, but there is a sense of awe and wonder in those paintings. So I'd like to believe that's you. Maybe it's not, but you've also done something equally full of awe and wonder. You've brought two wonderful girls into the world, and they're going to watch classic Star Trek, and that can only be exciting. In my life, I never had that in my life. All the girls I knew that liked Star Trek slipped through my fingers like the star systems that Grand Moff Tarkin used to hold in his hand. But I want to thank you for writing that letter, and it's a great letter. And thank you. Really nice. Now, here's another letter that is a totally different letter, totally different kind of letter, but I thought it was fun because it was sort of Superman related, and now I seem to have misplaced it. I hate it when I do that. Here it is. I found it. Now, this letter has a photograph attached to it, and well, I'll get to the photograph when I reach it in the letter. This letter comes to us from Kamal. Kamal, I think I'm going to get this name, but Kamal Mohamedou? That's a great name. Mohamedou. Kamal Mohamedou. Hello, Robert. I don't usually write emails like this, but after watching your July 8th YouTube episode on the new Superman movie, I felt I had to. Your observations, or Robservations, weren't just thoughtful, they echoed everything that I've been thinking and saying myself. It would have felt like a crime to not let you know that someone out here fully gets what you're saying. Life's too short to miss a moment of true resonance, so thank you for getting everything exactly right. I didn't pay him to say this, by the way. Every point you made was music to my ears, but the most subtle and striking insight was your concise comparison to Superman 2025 is to Donner's film, what Star Trek 2009 was to the original Star Trek. That analogy of James Gunn's dumbed-down Superman to Donner's Superman is beautifully put. Bravo. I'm grateful for your thoughtful episode. Now, I don't even need to explain my point of view anymore. I can just share your video. If someone gets it, we can talk. I was also surprised and impressed to see that you were involved with 2006's Superman Returns. The film deeply disappointed me. Poor script, flat cast. Brandon Routh came off painfully dorky, and Bryan Singer, whose direction felt both mediocre and disturbingly off. Everything felt wrong. Even Williams' music was misused. The Fortress of Solitude and the plane rescue sequence? His take was more fan fiction than filmmaking, and even the flying sequences lacked Reeves' grace and elegance. Now this is when I have to stop and say, see, I'm not a paid shill. Even movies I was involved with that were made by friends of mine, I'm not beyond posting criticism of. For 47 years, it seems Superman has suffered in the hands of people who didn't grasp the messianic undertones, the Shakespearean beauty of the Krypton Act, the Norman Rockwell warmth of the Kansas sequences, or the near spiritual atmosphere of the Fortress of Solitude. Those elements laid the foundation for the heroic arc that followed, and they've been too often neglected. So thank you again for articulating all of this better than I could. You made me feel less alone in my convictions. Since you now have a sense of who I am intellectually, it's only fair to share a bit about myself. My name is Kamal. I'm 60. I saw Superman the movie on Saturday, January 27th, 1979, the day after it premiered in France. I was 14, and although I'm from the country of Mauritania in northwest Africa, we were living in Paris at the time, and my father was a diplomat. Much like you, that movie changed everything for me. It introduced me to cinema and to John Williams, whose music still shapes my emotional world and whom I had the privilege of seeing in concert twice in the U.S. From what I saw on YouTube, I suspect we share a similar taste in films, though I must confess I'm not a Trekkie. With your permission, I'll remain loyal to the original Star Wars trilogy. Now that I've seen what you look like, and you do seem like a genuinely good guy, I thought it only fair, and here it is, I thought it only fair to attach a photo of me with Ridley Scott, taken after a lovely 3-hour flight from Casablanca to London in 2006. He was kind enough to chat with me once he realized I knew more about his own trivia than he did. I hope this note finds you well, and though I live in a desert country by the Atlantic, I want you to know that you're not preaching in the desert. Warm regards, Kamal. I mean, come on, if I'm having a bad day, all I have to do is dip into the mail bag and read things like that. So I want to thank Melissa and Kamal for writing those 2 letters, lovely letters in, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And now, back to Weapons. So, I read the script for Weapons like 2 years ago, and I have become a fan of Zach Cregger. I had read the script for Barbarian before I saw the movie, and what I really loved was the script for Barbarian was what the movie was. Zach Cregger wrote his script, and he executed flawlessly on the script that he wrote, which is not always the case, especially sometimes first-time writer-directors fall into their own assholes, and they can't, the beauty of their scripts, maybe they should have given it to someone else to direct, but in Zach Cregger's case, and the reason being, and as I've learned, especially watching all these interviews with him that he did during the lead up to Weapons, which I think was great. Kudos to Warner Brothers for putting him out on that circuit. He's a very thoughtful, very articulate, very intelligent guy. And learning about his prep for his movies, he storyboards and shoots photographs, and he probably has his editor cut together a story reel version of the movie even before he shoots it. But like Alfred Hitchcock before him, he does a lot of prep himself. He writes his own scripts and does the kind of prep, and that's what you want to hear from a director. He's a true auteur. So the movie that you see is meticulously planned beforehand, and whether it's your jam or not, Weapons is a flawlessly executed film, both from a directorial standpoint and certainly cinematography. It's beautifully shot, beautifully realized, beautifully executed. And I was really, really deliriously excited to see the film. And I went with Alvaro, who wrote Equimedian, a book that is now available on Amazon. Terrific book. It honors 70s new wave science fiction, and it's beautifully written. You'll know for the first 2 paragraphs that you got to read this book. It's amazing. So anyway, that said, so I go, and we went to the Harkins Mountain Grove 16. I do have to say, the CineX Theater, I believe it needs adjustment. I love that theater. The sound system's incredible. But the last 2 films I've seen there, the projection is dim. It's laser projection, and it is dim. It happens. You know, people, we don't have the fanaticism, but Harkins, I love you guys. I give you all kinds of play on this channel and on the John Campy Show. You got to bring that CineX screen up to snuff. It's got to get those brightness levels up again, because hey, it happens. You got to calibrate your stuff. People don't know. So, and by the way, everybody that works at that theater is so nice, especially the staff behind the bar. After we saw the movie, Alvaro and I were sitting at the bar for like 2 hours yammering about Weapons. Now, I had a very interesting experience with him, and we both I was not taken with the movie. I have to say, I was somewhat disappointed. And, you know, I was even told to maybe not, that I was too hyped up, you know, that I was setting myself up for disappointment. But I don't think it was that. I was, and it didn't really come into relief for me until Alvaro told me tonight. We're going to start our own YouTube show, the two of us. So if you like what we did last week, we're going to start a bi-weekly YouTube show called The Forever Era. And what we are going to do in the show, you'll learn more about it in the days to come. He and I are going to concentrate. Each episode's probably going to be a half an hour long, and each one of us is going to bring something that we dearly love. Could be a movie, could be a novel, could be an album, could be comics. Something that we dearly love, and we'll tell you beforehand what it is so you can follow along at home. But the Forever Era, which is something that Alvaro told me, is what we live in now, where there's so much stuff. We now live, and everybody can look back and get what they want forever. So the Forever Era begins now and will continue on, because you'll never have enough time to get through everything. So for forever, you can find the good stuff. And Ted Sturgeon, Theodore Sturgeon, the science fiction writer, has a law. Sturgeon's law said 90% of everything is crap. But our show, because of the Forever Era that we live in, the 10% is vast. And we're going to take you through the 10% of things that we think are great. Because people are always asking me to talk about movies and books and things, comics. Where's your reading list? We're going to go through all kinds of stuff, and that's what the show's going to be. It's going to be called The Forever Era. And we're going to take you through that great 10%. But anyway, that's coming. But we were talking, and then on the phone tonight, he made something clear to me. And what we were both bumping on was, and this is silly to say, was the logistics of everything that was happening. Now, I don't want to spoil. I can't get into, I'm not going to get into the actual plot because it's only Friday night. The movie just opened, and there are wonderful surprises to be had. But I will say, and I mean, the internet has spoiled the shit out of this movie already, but I don't want to do that here. I'll just say that there is a supernatural element to this movie. And logic as well. And we were arguing and ruminating and discussing and trying to figure out, well, the film didn't do a good job of explaining away all of this stuff. And Alvaro said something really interesting. He said, well, the movie's set up like a mystery. And we, as audience members, are conditioned to, when there is a mystery that is being presented, that we hope at the end of the mystery that it has a satisfying outcome and that all the questions are answered and the protagonists and the antagonists, we all understand what's going on. And that's what we were picking apart, the logistics of the supernatural. We're saying, like, well, how come this? How come that? Why didn't this? Why didn't that? There's a police patrol car that is sitting in one place for a particularly long period of time. And you're like, well, didn't somebody notice? Like, there was all these things that we were picking apart. And I will tell you that last night I felt unsatisfied because, and I didn't realize this at the time, I was looking at it from this, and I'd read the script, but in the script, these details were not, they didn't come into full, you don't feel them the same way. You're following it along, going, okay, I accept that. But because it was set up as a mystery, you expect it to give you the satisfaction of when a good mystery is revealed. You're like, oh, okay. And Alvaro brought up the movie Gone Girl, that Gillian Flynn, she actually adapted her own novel. She wrote the novel, another one-sitting novel for me. I read about that book. Like, I don't do it as much now, but I used to really keep up with the New York Times book review, Entertainment Weekly, their book reviews. I would go get like whatever the top selling books were if they appealed to me, and I really kept up with the college album charts and new books. And I was a fanatic to go get the new popular fiction and read it. And that when Gone Girl came out, I jumped all over that. It was like catnip to me, and it was a one-sitting banger of a novel. And the movie, again, a fantastic adaptation of that book. Fincher knocked that shit out of the park. Rosamund Pike, sexy as hell, and then a great femme fatale. Really love the film, love the book. But when the story unfolds, it's got this great... It's very satisfying because it all plays out. You know what's going on. Well, I was expecting when I was watching Weapons to have that same feeling when it was over, and I didn't have that. And then last night I talked to Dave Parker, who directed The Hills Run Red for me, well, for us. And, he felt the same way. And Mike Mendez, another director friend of ours, went with Dave to see it at the Burbank 16. And they were looking at it the same way I was, which was kind of odd because we're horror fans. Like, we'll sit there and we will excuse every inconsistency in Lucio Fulci movies. Like we'll worship at the altar of the beyond, or Argento's Suspiria. Like, oh yeah, even though there's all of this supernatural stuff that isn't exactly logical, and if you're a fan of Italian horror or giallo movies, a lot of the time it doesn't always pay off the way, say, something in America might pay off. So why would I bring this sensibility into Weapons? Why wouldn't I immediately just embrace everything and go with it? Well, after watching a lot of the reaction videos, a lot of my favorite go-to people, I watch like Stuckman's review, I watch Jeremy Johns' review, I love Heavy Spoilers. If you haven't watched that channel, I love that guy, the British guy. There's a lot of channels that did real deep dives into the film. Dan Murrell, all the usual suspects that do really good online criticism. There's some really good people out there, and some people loved it, some people felt the way I did, but then there's a lot of people that were diving in to all the different things. Like we find out, of course, I can tell you. Because they played the movie at 2:17. 2:17 is a big number in the movie. It's the time of night when children disappeared. Well, there's a couple of things. There's characters named John and Matthew in the movie. Well, Matthew 2:17 deals with children, and then of course there's The Shining, and in the novel The Shining, the room of the Overlook Hotel is room 217. Not 237. The hotel that was served as the exterior of the film asked Kubrick to change the number of the hotel room to not have it be 217, so people wouldn't want to stay there or anything. So Kubrick changed the number for the movie into room 237 because that hotel didn't have a room 237 in it, so nobody was going to be like, I don't want to stay in room 217. So and Alvaro and I were talking tonight about all this. We were kind of reassessing the film, and he was bringing up things like Picnic at Hanging Rock. Peter Weir's wonderful. If you haven't seen Picnic at Hanging Rock, it's an incredibly beautiful film. It's a true story about these girls that disappear. It's a period piece about these girls that disappear, and it really goes unexplained. There's not, you don't know. You don't know. It's ambiguous. So I realized that this movie that I was really excited to see, Weapons, that I thought was incredibly well executed and beautifully done, I didn't enjoy it as much because I'd forgotten what it was. It is, in the truest sense, and it tells you this from the very opening voiceover that you hear in the trailers, that it is a fairy tale. And there's a lot of things in the movie, in case you weren't paying attention, hello in there. The movie tells you what it is. It was a failing of me that I was not, the movie told you that I got to a point where I expected the movie to be different than what it had been telling me. Now, what did I think of Weapons? I thought it was thoroughly engaging. As I said, it's beautifully made. And, as people have told you, it starts with title cards of the names of characters, and you watch this sort of story that comes back in on itself until it doesn't, and then you have what would normally be called the reveal and the mystery. You'd find out what the mystery is all about. But in the case of this film, it is a fantastical horror film. So to expect it to unwind the way, it's not fucking Chinatown. You know, it's not Gone Girl. It's not that. It's a wicked, nasty little fairy tale that has all kinds of allusions to modern America, and there are things in it. David Fincher is one of Zach Cregger's mentors. He's even name-checked in the end credits. There's shots that look like they are right out of Gone Girl. There's shots that look like they're right out of The Shining. There's lots of shots that you might know, especially if you're a horror fan, because Zach Cregger is very obviously very well read. So, and then what I have loved is to see the entire explosion of joy and online discussion about weapons. Whether you love weapons, like weapons, or it wasn't for you, isn't it great to have something that everybody's like embracing and talking about and is excited about? I mean, we've been lucky. 2025, Andor. I mean, I'd say Companion got January off. It ended January with a bang. If you haven't seen Companion, by the way, Companion, Minecraft, Until Dawn, How to Train Your Dragon, Weapons, The Long Walk are all executive produced by one Roy Lee, the unsung best producer in Hollywood. Unbelievable. Where does he get all those wonderful scripts? But I'll tell you, auteur horror, Warner Brothers again, Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca, betting on auteurist horror. Like I said, Companion, Sinners, now Weapons. Big hits. I mean, I don't know how much Weapons is going to wind up making. Sure, it didn't cost $200 million, but it might have a $50 million opening weekend. They said it made $5 million. It was $5.7 million today. It made yesterday. All that is good news, and hopefully the studios will take notice. Blumhouse knew this, over at Universal, but now Warner Brothers has turned into a powerhouse of original horror. Lest we not forget Final Destination Bloodlines, a film that knocked it out of the park. A moribund franchise, gone for 14 years. They bring it back. Craig Perry brings it back in grand fashion with everybody who worked on that film. They greenlit Final Destination Bloodlines 2, or Final Destination, whatever, is it 7, 8? Who knows? We're getting that. We're getting a huge box set of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I mean, we horror fans, we're eating good. We are eating good. We're getting auteurist horror from everywhere. I mean, A24, who knows what we're going to get. We've even got interest. Eddington was very interesting. We've got a Paul Thomas Anderson movie coming out that I did not know was Thomas Pynchon's Vineland, just like Inherent Vice. I didn't realize it was an adaptation of that book until Alvaro told me. Who knew? Well, he did. But anyway, so we're living in great times. But I found an article from, this is crazy. This article was published on September 11th, 2001. Let me get to the article. Here it is. It was written by Mary McNamara, and it was published at 12 a.m. Pacific time. This article was published on the day of one of the most horrific events in American history, 9/11, and yet it was published by the LA Times before what happened on that terrible day happened. And I found this article, and it's, from 24 years ago, and I thought I would share it with you. The rules that horror films live and die by. So let's jump into this, shall we? Mary McNamara, published on September 11th, 2001. By the way, if you've got them, smoke them. I've got my cocktail. Let's have one. Let's drink to Zach Cregger. Let's drink to Weapons. Let's drink to Roy Lee for bringing us Companion, The Long Walk, and Weapons. And that's not even counting Minecraft, Until Dawn, and which, by the way, is a better movie than people give it credit for. Until Dawn and Companion. Get them both. Watch them as a double feature. Why not? Here's to you, Roy. Mary McNamara, take it away. It's all about the high. The jolt of familiar anticipation as the drug hits the bloodstream, the sweet arc of it moving through the muscles and the joints, tightening the shoulders, the abdomen, clenching fingers and jaw, rising through the body like a scream. Adrenaline. The drug of choice among horror movie fans. Confession? I love horror films. Most of my friends don't get it. When they learn of my vice, they blink, disbelieving, as if they discovered I'd have a passion for demolition derbies. Some think getting freaked out scared is painful and pain is to be avoided. They don't understand the difference between fear that is real and fear that is not. Others are just snobs. They classify any movie with a fright potential as a horror film, which they instantly confuse with a slasher film. They don't want to watch ghost stories, though the presence of a major name, Jack Nicholson, Nicole Kidman, Steven Spielberg, can tempt a few. A pop culture phenomenon such as The Sixth Sense, remember this article was written in 2001, can bring in a non-horror crowd. So can the current hit, The Others, the kind of horror film that lovers of Merchant Ivory could appreciate. But even the ones who go will claim they just wanted to see the performance or the special effects. Not too many grown-ups will admit that it's fun to be scared. Well, 24 years later, I don't think that's true, but we'll go on. Certainly the horror highs that come so easily in youth are harder to find as the years trudge by. Yeah, because your real life turns into a horror. My first hit was a vicarious one. My mother telling me the story of the first scary movie she had ever seen, The Mummy's Hand, and how that night she had mistaken a coat hanging in the front closet for the mummy's linen-swathed arm. She pounced on the final words and I screamed. It was heaven. I came of age during the glory days of the slasher film. Shoulder to shoulder in the chill dark, my girlfriends and I screamed our way through Friday the 13th, Halloween in the fog, urging each other into a frenzied communal reaction that can be achieved only by large groups of adolescent girls. These days, there doesn't seem to be as much to get stoked about. The self-consciousness of Scream only worked that once. The subsequent rip-offs are not worth the money. Slasher movies in general don't work anymore. I'm old enough to want the good stuff. Movies in which the supernatural and the psychological blur. I get distracted now when the acting stinks or the plot is inconsistent or when I can see the ending coming from the lobby. The Blair Witch Project worked for me. So did The Sixth Sense, even though I thought the fact that Bruce Willis's character did not carry his wounds with him like all the other dead folks was a major cheat. The Gift was really good. Sam Raimi's The Gift. Can Cate Blanchett do anything poorly? In spite of the predictable Ghost of Boo Radley ending. Recently, I went to see Session 9, the supernatural thriller set in a mental hospital, and for a few glorious moments, I thought it was going to work. But as the weight of the exposition collapsed into a predictable ending, I realized I was wrong. Hey, Session 9's good. The Others was much better, although the photosensitive children's setup was horribly annoying. I spent much of the movie wondering if such a condition exists, and why the mother didn't just merely swap day for night and let her children out of the house once in a while. These films prove how hard it is to make a truly great horror film. It's not about high body counts or ghoulish makeup. Unfortunately, many horror filmmakers have bought into the snobbery about their craft. They apparently consider their audience too callow to be bothered with nuance of plot or inconsistent characters. They don't see the difference between making an audience jump, which anyone can do with the right music and light, and really scaring them. Both Session 9 and The Others came so close to being really, truly scary. But both could have benefited from the horror film addict's rules to good horror filmmaking. Rule 1. The ordinariness of the characters' real lives must be established convincingly and immediately. Demons in hell are not scary, they're just part of the scenery. If a truly extraordinary setup, a creepy snowbound hotel, The Shining, an abandoned insane asylum, Session 9, a gothic country house, and The Others, is going to be used, then the behavior of the characters must be even more realistic. Nicole Kidman was so obviously and believably twitching in The Others that one could accept all the opening and closing and the locking of doors. Almost. Rule 2. Signature creepy noises are good, but should be chosen with care and used parsimoniously. Good word, parsimoniously. Parsing them out, I guess parsimoniously, I think that's the first time I've ever read that word aloud in my life. Ordinary sounds work best. Children's laughter, where there are no children, is always a winner, as are footsteps, but not the laughable yet often used step, hall, drag variety, and the sudden clattering of any sort. Mysterious music, adult laughter, and or weeping, and cheesy malevolent voiceovers are the modern equivalent of chain rattling and ghostly moans. Rule 3. Ordinary things in extraordinary circumstances can be very scary. The piles of rock in Blair Witch were much more unsettling than, say, a computer-generated ghoul would have been. For some reason, the sudden appearance of antique personal items, the lockets and watches that fall through the ceiling in Poltergeist, and the cache of coins in Session 9 is very effective, making the dead seem real and present, but also, well, dead. Likewise, old photos, although best when not found in cobweb and cliché-filled attics. Rule number 4. Empty, oversized rooms, hotel kitchens, hospital wards, public libraries, empty schools, produce anxiety almost instantly and offer great clatter, weird echo potential. Rooms filled with sheet-shrouded furniture, however, just look silly, no matter what the soundtrack is up to. Rule 5. Go easy on the long shots down dim corridors, basement stairways, underground tunnels, empty bedrooms, or shadowy windows. Too much of this, and the viewer starts looking for the real estate agent. Also, avoid banal dialogue of the, gee, a real fixer-upper, hey? variety when the old house hospital factory looms into frame. In fact, avoid the nervous altogether. Rule 6. Children are spookier than adults, particularly dead children, but only when they're long dead. Dead children that bear any resemblance to those known by the audience members are just upsetting, although The Sixth Sense handled it pretty well. Killing a child during the modern time movie is almost always a bad idea. Babies, especially, must be handled with care. The sound of an infant crying in an empty room through the centuries is very scary. The sound of an infant crying at the approach of a real-time serial killer is just horrible. Rule number 7. Blood and gore all over the floor takes a film out of the ranks of horror and into slasher land, losing most of the adult audience. Hint, whenever the carpet, knife, scythe, meat hook makes its appearance, things are looking rocky. What actually happens is almost always less frightening than what the characters or audience think might happen, which is the whole point. Animate toys. Instead, let's bring back the menacing painting. It works so well in Dorian Gray, Rebecca, and The Uninvited. Also, between What Lies Beneath and The Gift, I think we've had enough haunted bathtubs for a while, and ghosts of drowned girls. You know what? I take that back. We can never have enough ghosts of drowned girls. They have such great hair. Rule number 9. One evil and or occult force is usually more than enough. The Frighteners failed because there were too many supernatural things going on. Ghosts should either be funny or evil. It's hard to do both. The others also got bogged down when Dad showed up, looking very much the worse for wear and almost giving the whole conceit away. What was he doing there anyway? Why could he leave his special place and other ghosts could not? Actually, any evocation of the rulebook of the spirit world is best left to comedies, like Beetlejuice, unless part of the plot is decoding it. Also, ghostly behavior should be consistent. Can they walk through walls or can't they? Rule number 10. The writer and or director must know what is going on. Is the force behind the evil a real ghost or merely the tortured psyche of the main character? Some films can never decide. Does it not have to be spelled out for us? It does not have to be spelled out for us. There's nothing wrong with a turn-of-the-screw type ending. But certainly Henry James knew what really happened. And so should every filmmaker. I thought that was a fun article to read from 24 years ago that was in the LA Times. I would say this. Zach Kreger knows what's up. He knows what his movie was about. He knows what he was doing. Whether you want to, and sometimes, it was even, if you think about the idea of a parasite, that might have even been a little heavy-handed, a little telegraphed. There's parasites on the wall. There's movies with parasites. You get to see Cordyceps. I mean, he's probably a Walking Dead fan. I mean, pardon me, a Last of Us fan too. No, I did that on purpose. I'm just kidding. But Zach Cregger's movie was full of references and allusions to other movies, to the Bible, to Stephen King, to Peter Weir, to Picnic at Hanging Rock. But it was done in such a unique way, a subtle way. And if you didn't know about those things, it wouldn't get in the way of your enjoyment of the film. So I have to say that I think that Weapons, again, the year of horror. We've had 4 horror movies, 3 of them from Warner Brothers. I mean, no, wait, pardon me. 4 from Warner Brothers, because Companion's New Line, Sinners is Warner Brothers proper. I think Final Destination it might have been New Line too, but that's a division of Warner Brothers. And Weapons. 4 horror films, and the only one that didn't do that well was Companion, but it should have done much better because it's a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it. So, great stuff. Wait, people are saying the audio is cutting out? I hope not, or maybe that's something else. Anyway, let's see what you guys are saying. I know that there's some super chats, so let's see what people have to say. Sci-Fi Extremist has become an imagination connoisseur. Well, thank you, Sci-Fi Extremist. Tony LV426, nice reference, says, I just watched the first episode of Alien Earth. You're going to love it. It's exactly what I've been wanting from the franchise since Alien. Well, I'll tell you, you know me, I'm always into auteurist horror, and Noah Hawley is the man. The fact that you've got, Noah Hawley did a fantastic job with Legion, one of the best takes on X-Men ever, at least in the audiovisual medium. What he did with Fargo is amazing. And remember, he was going to make a Doctor Doom movie, and he was attached to Star Trek. Both of those things were a big loss that we didn't get them. But Alien Earth seems to me, my friend Corey Manlove is going to complain about the timeline, but I think Noah Hawley is very aware of the timeline, and it makes sense. The fact that we're going to find out about artificial life, we're going to find out about the synthetics and hybrids and cyborgs. I'm looking very forward to that, combined with not just... You find out how Weyland-Yutani knew there were aliens on LV-426 because they were looking for all kinds of very dangerous alien life, not just the xenomorphs, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen. Tom Jr. Jackson says, Rob, I've been reading Shatner's book, The Ashes of Eden, and today I started Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What are you reading? Anything good? What am I reading? That's a good question. I am not reading a book right now. To be honest. I probably should read Baron Orgaz, but I haven't read it yet. Only because I put it down. I put things down. You know what, though? I was reading a lot of... Actually, I read... what did I just read? The $1 Million Wound. The $1 Million Wound, which is another... We're talking about that. The $1 Million Wound and True Crime. $1 Million Wound comes after True Crime. But I was reading $1 Million Wound just the other day just because I want to do it so badly. We're going to do True Crime first, but I want to do $1 Million Wound. But Ashes of Eden. So for those of you who don't know, Ashes of Eden, Melissa, Ashes of Eden is an incredible Star Trek novel. It's the beginning of the 10-volume Shatnerverse, where Shatner teamed up with Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. They were great Star Trek writers, and one of the greatest Star Trek novels is Prime Directive, and they're also their novel Federation that were both written by them. Both of those books are fucking phenomenal. And read those, but The Ashes of Eden is the first Shatner novel that they wrote with him, and it's a great book. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Quentin Tarantino's novelization of his movie, also very interesting. What up? It's Dom. It says, I just came out of the theater and Weapons was awesome. But I agree with you, not as great as everyone says, and it had me wanting more of something. I love the show. Well, again, that was me. And now after watching and reconsidering it, the movie is a fairy tale. And it works with fairy tale logic. Whether it's the Pied Piper, whether it's Hansel and Gretel, whether there's a witch in the woods, it's a fairy tale. It announces it's a fairy tale at the very beginning with the voiceover of a child we never meet. So it is a movie that is and what I was doing was my mind was not in fairy tale land. It was in solving the mystery land which was firmly entrenched. I'm like, okay, it's a mystery story about these missing children. And Zach Cregger has said himself that he was very influenced by Prisoners, the movie Prisoners. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, let's go. Is the movie a metaphor for school shooting? Obviously, we see like an AR-15 in a dream sequence, and you've got were the missing kids stand-ins for a slaughtered class at Columbine or something? Could very well be, if that's one of your readings of the film. But it ultimately is a fairy tale. And I think now, I wasn't in that mindset yesterday. I've been brought down, and now I have to reconsider it. Let's see. John from New York says, "Hi, Rob. I saw Weapons tonight, and I must say I really enjoyed it. I love the structure and the character-centric narrative, but I kept asking what the point was. What was its thematic purpose?" Well, I think in terms of what does the title Weapons even mean? There's a lot of things. There's a lot of weapons in the way people hurt one another. There's all kinds of different layers. Look, I tell you, you will go down a rabbit hole watching people's analysis of weapons on YouTube. Already, there's hours to be had. But that's the thing. I think we were all, you might have been like me, your mindset was in a different place when you're watching it. And it's not, if you think about it as a fairy tale, I was getting into the mechanics of the fairy tale nature of it all. I got to tell you, I was talking about Roy Lee again. The Ring, both Ringu, the original Japanese version, and Gore Verbinski's, 2001, right? 2001, 24 years ago, version of the story, the remake. I've always looked at that as the most ridiculous thing that you totally buy into. And Alvaro was telling me that, it's because he looks at it as it's metaphoric. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, no, it's a horror film. We got to go by the rules because, look, all great fantasy, science fiction, and horror has to play by a rule book. You have to set up the rules and play by them. Unless you don't even realize you're in a movie, like Weapons pulls as Alvaro said, a bait and witch. That movie's a bait and witch, and you don't know it when you're first watching it. And I got to give him the credit for that. I changed the title of this stream. Weapons is a bait and witch. And if you don't know that going in, your mindset is, how are we going to solve the mystery of these kids? If you don't know where it's going. And that's what you're doing. You're in that logical, I'm following the procedural nature of what I'm being shown. This is true, that's true, this is happening, that's happening. But the movie's a bait and witch. So all of those expectations, talk about being subverted, they're thrown out the window. And you're like, wait, what? And then suddenly you're talking about parasites and cordyceps, and you're thinking about The Last of Us. So John from New York, I think now by tomorrow you'll have completely reassessed the movie and you'll start thinking about it. BCH2 says, so it's better than the new War of the Worlds. You know what? I think just about anything is better than... I would rather open up a restaurant in Gaza than watch the new War of the Worlds again. Is that in bad taste? I don't know. Andy Montmayor, 175, says, Rob, I saw Fantastic Four. I loved it. Your thoughts on it, please. I really liked Fantastic Four a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun, but again, I thought it suffered from being cut down too much. I would have liked to have spent more time with those characters. I would have liked more time to have set up in that world. I understand why they did that. I think both Superman and Fantastic Four they had to be 2 hours. They couldn't be 2.5 hour long movies. They had to be what they were. They had to be kind of safe, and I would like to have seen more of the movie. John from New York says, I know the motivations of the characters, and I picked up a lot of what was being put down, but I ask you, story-wise, what was it trying to say defiantly worth the discussion and rewatch? Okay, I think that's a very valid question. You know, but what you're looking for is some weighty thematic underpinnings, the way you might ask the same of The Shining. But I do think that the movie, if you just think about it as a fairy tale, I mean, I think obviously Zach Cregger said that all the characters, he had I believe it was because a good friend of his died when he was like 31 years old, part of his comedy team. I don't know how the man died, but it was shattering to him. And Weapons is the result of him going through grief. I mean, you can look at all the characters as... I mean, I hate everything is like, well, it's a result of their trauma. That to me is a lazy excuse. But, I mean, all of the characters, the title Weapons, I would go back to that title. You know, there are literal weapons in the movie. There are people that are weapons against one another, weaponized. The real question is, I ask you, why do we have to know what it was trying to say? You know, I think we're so used to getting easy answers. Because that's what I was asking myself yesterday. I'm like, what is this? What is really going on here? And sometimes the journey itself, you're meant to puzzle over it. You know, in a way, I used to love listening to Stanley Kubrick. He didn't want to. He explained it a couple times, but he never liked to explain. There's a book called The Making of Kubrick's 2001. It's a great making of book, but in it there's a chapter of people that had written to Kubrick letters asking about what was 2001 about. I mean, you show that movie to people today, they're like, what? Huh? You know, when I always thought it was a fairly easy movie to understand, but a lot of people just find it not worth the time. So I would say that not everything has to come off being especially horror movies. You know, sometimes if horror movies take you on a journey, what is it trying to say? Like, you know, is The Fog just really about why it was mean to lure the Elizabeth Dane into the rocks and kill everybody on board because you didn't want them to be part of your community? Maybe. You could sit there and say, well, you know, fear of the other is wrong. But really, The Fog's about making a cool ghost story. You know? What is The Fog about? Is it about Stevie Wayne's playlist? KAB, Antonio Bay. I don't think so. You know, it just is. It takes you on a journey. It unsettles you. It scares you. It makes you think, but maybe not too deeply. Maybe that's enough. I mean, we're looking for some great meaning in Weapons. Zach Cregger even said when he sat down to write it, halfway through the script, he didn't even know where he was going. He just started to write. So it's not like he'll even tell you, I didn't sit down and think this is going to be my great treatise on trauma or school violence or the state of America. I think that he just sat down and wound up telling us a fairy tale. It's a campfire movie, ultimately. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything profound, although people are finding profundity in it, which I think is great. Shonen Kaiju 2908 has become a member of the channel. Major Chai Chai says, hello, Robert. Well, hello, Major Chai Chai. You know, I put another one of these up in my car today. One of these removed before launch things. I love these. Yes. Bathing App 891 says, can we get a Cobra remake? As long as it's better than the original Cobra, which, let's face it, I'm not really convinced that it is. Cobra's not a great movie. It's like a cobbled together movie. It's got cool stuff in it, though. I love how Stallone looks in that movie. You know? But it's not a great movie. But, you know, did you get the new Arrow disc that came out, the new 4K of Cobra? I don't think I'm going to be buying it anytime soon, but I hear it looks great. And if you love the movie, hey, why not get it? Let's see, we got some tips from a writer's perspective. We have 2 tips from a writer. By the way, if you want to send in a tip and you don't want to send in a super chat, there is a tip link in the description, and there's also the article I read there that is in the description as well, so you can always find that link. From a writer's perspective, says, what are your thoughts on vulgarity in both film, but in the broader context of comics, novels, etc.? I've heard you cuss, so I know you're okay with it. But does using curse words in a script or book make it appear as less professional in any way? I don't fucking know. I'm just kidding. No, that's okay. That is a good question, and I've got an answer for you. For instance, I don't think swearing belongs in Star Trek at all. Period. End of story. Now, does that mean I'm a prude? No, I just don't. I don't think swearing belongs in Star Wars at all. It feels incongruous. If you're gonna have like in Battlestar Galactica, they came up with their own curse word, which is frack, fracking toasters, and you know what that word means. You know what it's supposed to, but it's their own word. They created it, and I think it's a really great question you're asking, because if you're writing, it really depends on what you're writing. From like I'll give you an example. The Shawshank Redemption is a movie about men in prison. And there are scenes where they insinuate that there is rape. There is male rape in that movie. And that Andy Dufresne, they even say it. Sometimes he's able to fight them off, and sometimes he isn't. They don't show you he probably was gang raped by 3 guys. Would that movie have been made better? Should we have seen that kind of horrible vulgarity and that horrible sexual violence in that film? I would say no. I would say that movie, and there's a lot of people that criticize that movie that say that they made prison life look almost enjoyable if you've got your buddies. And I disagreed, because I think that the movie kept a consistent tone, the exact perfect. Frank Darabont had the perfect tone. And it comes down to, I think that vulgarity can really take you out of things. Now, here's the thing. One person's vulgarity is another person's afternoon at the park. And like, for instance, if you're a religious person and you have a problem with cussing at all, I can see that. But I also think then that sometimes you might compromise your storytelling for fear. Like if you are writing a hard-boiled crime story and your characters don't cuss, it'll feel inauthentic after a time. Quentin Tarantino has been criticized by filmmakers like Spike Lee for using the N-word a lot, which is a very vulgar word. And I think it's an onomatopoeia. It sounds like it is. And it really, it's really hard to use and say. I have a hard time even uttering that word if I'm not singing along to a rap song, it's hard for me to even say that word because it is vulgar. But it's interesting. I mean, it really depends. If you're writing a story and vulgarity is called for, but you're pulling back on it, that can hurt your story. It really depends that you as a writer have to decide what it is you're trying to do. And again, I think it's a very, very good question. I don't think using curse words, I don't think anyone's going to accuse Quentin Tarantino. I mean, he's got filthy language in his movies. I'll tell you a story. I've told this before. Michael Mann's first theatrical feature is a movie called Thief. And Robert Prosky, in a great turn as the villainous mob boss that ends up having Frank, James Caan's character, work for him, and Frank doesn't want him to, but the mob boss brings him into it. When I first saw that movie, I've told people this, in 1981, I was 14 years old, or as 13 years old. I was visiting my grandfather in Palm Springs. I'd never heard my grandfather utter a swear word my entire life. I went out of my way to do I would never do anything vulgar in front of him. And we went and saw Thief. I didn't know. It had Robert Prosky has a bit of a speech where he's telling James Caan's character what he's going to do to him. And in my young years, I had never heard profanity like that strung together. And I was shocked. Blood froze in my body. And I looked at my grandfather. He didn't acknowledge even hearing the words, but I was mortified that I was sitting next to my conservative grandfather, who I never heard him utter a bad word in his life. these were the worst words I'd ever heard come out of a person's mouth on the screen, writ large, 40 feet high. By the way, I love the movie. I love that movie. It's still, to this day, one of my favorite films of all time. But, oh man, when I heard him say that, I couldn't believe it. That was the vulgarity of it, and the way he said it, it was unbelievable. I think it's a very good question, but it really comes down to you. It comes down to the writer and what kind of a story you're writing. Look, I think that like The Exorcist, both the novel and the film demands vulgarity. You have to have the counterpoint to the priesthood. You have to have that. And that vulgarity is absolutely necessary. Again, some of the most hardcore vulgarity I'd ever seen in a movie. I first saw The Exorcist when I was 13 years old. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. Became one of my favorite movies of all time, too. It's one of the greatest horror films ever made. But then again, the vulgarity is being wielded by Satan or Pazuzu. I prefer Satan, and I am the devil. He says he's the devil. Carefully undo these straps. It's great stuff. That's a great question, though. From a writer's perspective, goes on to ask, is there a genre you think is both easiest to write but equally the easiest to screw up? My go-to answer would be either comedy or horror. I think making people laugh and making people scared can be so basic an approach, but also the most subjective. You're smarter than me. I think you're absolutely right. The thing about comedy is self-evident. And you can find that out by letting your audience read it. I've only written and directed one movie in my life, and it was a comedy, and it was very apparent if it was funny when we would do it in test screenings. If people laughed at the jokes, we kept them. If they didn't, we got rid of them. And I think the same is true if you're writing something, you read it aloud, or it's like doing stand-up. Stand-up people either laugh or they don't. And it's hard to do it, but I think it's self-evident. And I think the same is true of horror. Horror is simple. You're either scaring people or you're not. Also, but it depends on what kind of horror that you're making. I mean, I think that both Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, and The Exorcist, which came out, kind of contemporaries within a year of each other, are two of the greatest horror films ever written. Or filmed, produced, made. And first of all, Exorcist has an incredible script. So does Exorcist 3, by the way. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre is all about the feeling. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre does have jump scares in it, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre casts an overall. That movie it's apocalyptic in its feeling. I mean, what Cormac McCarthy was going for when he wrote The Road, that's what's happening in Texas Chainsaw. It is The Road. And when you're watching it, the reason that movie succeeds, it's unrelenting. You're seeing true human demons on Earth that are not supernatural. They are mankind down to its basic instinct. I was listening to there was an NPR, this is a total aside, but I was listening to an NPR story today. A New York Times reporter did a expose on how many, it was all on Uber, and Uber has like 6 billion rides a year. But it has, even though on a percentage scale it's very small, but they have a great deal of sexual assaults that happen. Their drivers, like women who are drunk, they told there was a horrible story where this driver took this woman to a motel who was completely intoxicated and raped her. And how much this goes on. And I'm like, and they were talking about how can the company prevent this? Well, clearly certain types of serial predators have figured out that Uber is a great way to find victims. And they never brought this up in the report. And when the reporter was delving into what Uber was doing to combat this, they had ride sharing techniques. And I'm like, how about the fact that you vet your drivers more, that everybody has to have a psychological test or something? Because people who are predators have figured out that, I can go drive Friday and Saturday nights where I have a preponderance of drunk people getting in the car, and if I want to prey on them, I can. But nobody was even saying that. They didn't even address this, and I'm thinking, that's a horror film. There's your horror movie right there, but I mean, it was horrifying, truly horrifying. But I don't to answer your question, I don't think that any genre is easy to write. I don't think anything is easy to write. I think great writing is always difficult. Always. Because great writers second guess themselves, and they think sometimes that they've written a page of drivel and they throw it away. I think great writing is hard. Like anything else, any artistic endeavor, it's never easy. It doesn't matter whether you're writing comedy or horror or a family, drama through the ages, a bodice-ripping romance, whatever it is. Great writing is always hard. There's nothing easy when you're writing. Nothing. And that's why it's so gratifying to read great works, great books, like Equimedian. Go out and buy it, Amazon, right now. Or go buy any of Max Allan Collins' books, too. So, yeah. Sci-Fi Extremist sends in a tip and says, are you familiar with the website Coverfly at all for screenwriters? If you are, or even if you're not, what are your thoughts on a screenwriting competition? A worthy pursuit in hopes of that small stepping stone, or are there better avenues for feedback? Look, to me, the only place that I mean, it's not fair. Like there's like the Nichols Fellowship. There are legitimate places, but the Blacklist, that's the most legit place. Screenwriting competitions don't really help you. Somebody might look at a screenwriting competition and get the top owner or the top, and everybody's writing them, or everyone's running them, and people pay money to get in them. I understand that. I mean, maybe those things can help, but the Nichols Fellowship and the Blacklist are two places that matter. People are they're looking at those scripts. But, entering screenwriting competitions, I don't see that as much of a valuable thing. I really don't. Unless you're submitting to the Blacklist or the Nichols Fellowship or something like that. I don't see it, because the thing about when you're writing a screenplay is if you were truly serious about trying to sell it or becoming a screenwriter, you must go to where the industry is. You must go to screenwriting competitions like the Blacklist. People pay attention to the Blacklist. And they do. I think they do like monthly stuff, or they do have competitions. So always look for screenwriting competitions that are industry adjacent in some way. I've never submitted a screenplay to a competition. I've only written 4 screenplays in my life. 1 we made, another we were going to make, and 2 I still want to make. 1 got very good. The 3rd one got very, very good coverage, and the last 2 I wrote are book adaptations. So I've never submitted them to a screenwriting competition. Although my first screenplay did win. Mark Altman and I, who wrote the script, we did win Best New Writers at the AFI Festival, presented to us by the Writers Guild of America. I guess I became a big disappointment after that. But hey, Free Enterprise 2 could have got made, and my other 2 scripts, I still want them to get made because I'm very proud of them. You just never give up, never surrender. But look, what's worthy is writing a screenplay. You don't need to win a competition at a screenwriting competition. What you need to do is write a great screenplay. And if you start sending it into places like the Nichols Fellowship or like the Blacklist, it could get seen. Because that's what you want to do, is get it made. 1001 Johnny says Ultraman Episode 10, The Mysterious Dinosaur Base, and Episode 14, The Pearl Defense Directive, and The Return of Ultraman Episode 20, The Monster is a Giant Shooting Star, in Space Ultraman Omega Episode 2, The Alien Scholar and I. Are those all the great episodes to watch? There you go. No one knows Ultraman more than our own 1001 Johnny. Somebody sent me a list of tokusatsu stuff to watch, mostly Kamen Rider, the other day. So, Movies with Justin, the YouTube channel, says, the final seconds disappointed me, but I adored the film. Yeah, it kind of ended abruptly. I wanted to see more of that. But again, it's because I'm expecting tropes. I'm expecting, was something passed on? Is it moving further? I mean, they kind of tell you everything and it's over. We're expecting what we normally get And when we don't get it, it's like, But yeah, but I can understand that because I kind of felt that way too. Warrants is it? Yeah, it's it's just Warren. Oh, it's Warren 1765 says, will Skydance cut Kurtzman? Well, I don't know what his contract says, but I don't think collectively that the Kurtzman era of Star Trek has done anything really for it. Do you see people buying? Do they buy product off the shelves of all that stuff? I think the real problem that I have with Kurtzman Star Trek, especially with Picard. I mean, I love Picard season 3 because I saw it as a great next generation movie. You could do what the Japanese do and take a whole series of an animated show and cut it into a movie. I mean, I haven't tried to do this, but other people have. You could cut season 3 of Picard into probably a 2 or 3 hour movie, and it'd be badass. But I love the way the classic characters, the legacy characters, were handled. Yeah, did it have a big kind of goofy plot about the Borg and teaming up with changelings? But that made sense. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the episode where how do they team up? How did these two bad bitches decide to take their vengeance out on the Federation? I thought that was rad. So, yeah. Played out 148 says, Rob, did you visit Gaza when you went to Israel? Conan did. I've read it described as an open-air prison. I feel like power, monetary politics are playing out there. First of all, none of those, it's so wild. Like if you, an open-air prison, I went to the Arab quarter, the Arab side of, and had some food, like outside of Jerusalem, and it was amazing. But no, because I was there for a convention. I was there for the Icons Festival that was at Tel Aviv University. I went with Roger Nygaard. He was showing Trekkies. I was showing Free Enterprise, and then we lectured after and hung out. It was. I'll tell you something. The fans in Israel are great. Israel's great. Tel Aviv is great. But both Gaza and the West Bank have thriving. They had, when I was there, thriving cities. There was people say because they can't get out. And I understand that, but, there's a reason why Egypt has closed the border with Gaza and had. But back in 2005 when I was there, that's when Israel was pulling out of Gaza. They took everything. They left all this great infrastructure. They completely pulled out of Gaza, and they could have done anything with Gaza. They could have turned Gaza into Dubai if they wanted to. But they didn't. So, unfortunately. But I loved it. I want to go back to Israel. As a matter of fact, to be honest, I just applied for Israeli citizenship. Now I have to prove my bona fides. I have to get my bar mitzvah certificate and all that to do that. Bro Southwest, Bro SW. Soderbergh's Presence, supposed to be good. Check it out. I own Presence, but I haven't seen it yet. I own it. I haven't seen it yet. I do want to check it out. A Warren 1765 says, why have I only made one movie? Well, I've only directed one movie. In terms of my career, I directed Free Enterprise. I was the associate producer of the specials. I developed and co-produced Agent Cody Banks and its sequel. I produced The Hills Run Red. I produced Tango Shalom. Like, if you ask Grok, did Pope Francis, or has a pope ever, check this out, I don't know if it's Chat GPT or Grok, but if you ask it, has a pope ever endorsed a movie? See what the answer is. And then, of course, The White Devils is our new film that we have coming out that I produced as well. What happened was, I'll tell you. So we had all this great stuff was going on with Free Enterprise, and for a year I traveled around the world and went to all these festivals, and everyone tells you how great you are. We had a great distribution offer from Fine Line, which we should have taken, but my producers were convinced we were going to sell the movie for swingers money, and I'm like, you're out of your minds. And we sold it to a distribution company that had picked up Gods and Monsters, and ours was their first regular acquisition. And they thought they were going to make a big splash. They opened it in L.A., Chicago, and New York. Here's been the frustrating thing in my entire career. Nobody listens to me because I'm Mr. like, yeah, man, let's have a good time, woohoo! So nobody thinks that I have any real business acumen, because I'm also like, let's go see this movie, dude. So it's hard to reconcile my fandom with my knowledge of the business, even though I have more knowledge of the business than probably anyone I've worked with, not in terms of actually producing things, but in terms of just general knowledge, because I've done a lot, like, many people that work in television that write and showrunners and all that, they've never produced a movie. They've never had to go raise independent financing and then go produce a movie in a foreign country for a studio. They haven't had to do that. I've worked in television too, but briefly. I worked on Femme Fatales and edited an animated series for Netflix. I directed 5 episodes of a Skinamax show. But what happened was, in my career, so I made Free Enterprise, and once you make a movie, it's like everybody talking about how they're broke, like the director of Honora, Sean Baker. He's like, I don't have any money. I make these low budget movies. Now I'm expected to go on the awards circuit. I don't have any money. You don't, unless you've had great commercial success. If you've lived in the independent film world, half the time you don't even get paid for the movies you make. Your distributors take all the money. I've not made 1 cent off Free Enterprise. I got paid when I was making the film. The amount of money. So I wrote the screenplay and directed the movie, but we started a company. So I got paid $14,000 to write and direct Free Enterprise, and then while it was part of my company that I founded, I made $1,000 a week. So and I needed a job. So after I left the company, after I was sort of unceremoniously kicked out of my own company that I founded, because I was shafted, believe it or not, I was betrayed, and I found out about it. So I left, and what did I do? I worked at NBC for a year as a producer editor, and I was making $250,000 a year, editing TV commercials, promos for NBC. I worked on the Olympics, the 2000 Olympics. I cut probably not 1,000. I did about 100 spots with a producer named David Hartwell. We sat in the basement at NBC. They rolled in an Avid. We just cut. We were supposed to do 1 spot, and we ended up doing 100. And they kept us there in the basement for 9 months, editing commercials for the complete Olympics. And then they liked my work so much they kicked me upstairs and gave me a very cushy job cutting primetime commercials for the 2000-2001 primetime launch. I worked on a campaign called It's Back to Work, and I brought my DVD special feature acumen to it, and I went and we shot behind-the-scenes footage of all the shows like West Wing and Third Rock and all behind the scenes, and we did these commercials of behind the scenes. It was really cool. It was a really cool campaign, and I was getting paid a lot of money. So, and then I kind of fell into working on DVD special features. And so suddenly I directed this movie. It came out and made no money, because they didn't listen to me. I said, you can't open Free Enterprise in 9 theaters in LA with no marketing budget. Put it in 1 theater. Put it in the Sunset 5. And they're like, no, we're going to make a big splash. I'm like, big splash? They open it in Century City. They open it in Westwood. I'm like, no one's going to go. They don't know what's playing there. There's nothing more depressing than renting a limo the day your movie comes out that you've had a great time traveling around the world with it, and then you go to theaters that are empty. That's a soul-crushing experience. And, one day when I write my memoirs, I can talk about how you go on the festival circuit, you travel all over the world. Free Enterprise had its world premiere at the Sitges Festival in Spain, in Barcelona, Spain. It was amazing. At the Hawaii Film Festival, Quentin Tarantino sat right behind me. He came to the after party and cornered me for an hour and peppered me with conversations about how I made Free Enterprise. He memorized all of Shatner's lines. He's like, man, that was some funny shit, man. I mean, that was my life for a year. And then the movie comes out, does nothing, and then you're zero. You're back to zero. We made the specials with James Gunn. Then I left the company, and then I went to NBC to cut commercials because they paid me a lot of money. And then I got married. And then suddenly you're making DVD special features. I'm like, as a fanboy, I'm now making feature-length documentaries on the making of Tron. I did Usual Suspects. I'm doing X-Men 1 and 2 for Brian. I started my own DVD production company while I was working for Curdy Pellerin. So there I was flying to the set of X2. I did Lord of the Rings. I'm in New Zealand for months at a time. I'm working on Chronicles of Narnia, Superman Returns in Australia for a year. I did, within that time period, we did buy the script for Agent Cody Banks and develop it. And Ashley Miller and Zach Stentz, my friends, we got them to rewrite the script, sold it to MGM, and suddenly we're producing a $25 million movie. That was cool. You know, so I mean, that's what I have done in my career. But the thing is, somebody would ask me, do I want to sit there and have all these dumb meetings with mid-level development people that can't? You can spend your entire life, you can spend years going. When I first made Free Enterprise, it won awards at the AFI Film Festival. I got an agent. My agent had me working on a project with Bill Cosby. I would go to Bill Cosby's house once a week and develop his book Fatherhood into a fictional narrative. Did I get paid to do that? No. Even though my agents hooked it up, I'm working with Bill Cosby, I was represented by William Morris. I am working for free. I'm driving from my job at NBC that I'm making $250,000 a year, driving across town to Santa Monica, which was like an hour. I had to figure out, how am I going to get 2 hours out of here? And I was sitting with Bill Cosby coming up with this story for months. And then I didn't make one dime. That's Hollywood, man. You know, and then suddenly William Morris merges, and I'm not an earner, and they got rid of their. I'd just been signed. I hadn't earned any money in 6 months because I hadn't written a second script, so I'm not. You know, I'm no longer at William Morris. So it's such a weird thing. The biggest mistake I made in my career was after Free Enterprise came out, I did not have another script I'd written because I thought I was working with my friends. We'd started a company. We'd produced the specials, and I thought I was squared away. I thought I was done. We had a production company. We'd just keep rolling into other movies. That's not what happened. But the biggest mistake I made was I did not have. Everyone asked me what I wanted to do next. I didn't have a script. I had books I wanted to adapt, but everybody wants you to. If I'd had a script, I got into every fucking place I wanted to get into. I had meetings with everybody, but I had nothing I wanted to make because I was doing all this other stuff. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. So, you know, it's tough, but I've managed to keep it going. Getting The Hills Run Red made, we were going to make it as a $350,000 movie, and getting it to Warner Brothers, getting Joel Silver's our executive producer, going to make it in Bulgaria with Dave Parker, my good buddy that I've been working with for over 10 years. That was a big deal to do that. So it's been, I haven't had any great commercial success, but I've had a lot of fun. I've edited feature films. Tango Shalom got blessed by the Pope. Tango Shalom was playing in Germany. We had a great big German deal. Here's another thing, great thing with my career. Tango Shalom opens October 8th in Germany, in 50 cities across Germany. October 8th, 2023. October 5th, 2023. 50 theaters. We have a great TV deal. Hamas invades Israel on October 7th. On October 8th, there's protests, pro-Palestinian protests all over the streets of Germany. Our movie gets pulled from theaters. Our movie that's about, it's a Jewish-themed film, but it was all about inclusion and religious tolerance. And our movie, which would have paid for the entire production, gets pulled out of theaters. That's the story of my career. And the TV deal we had goes away. What do? Do you give up? Do you get depressed? Do you slit your wrists? No, because I'm still talking on YouTube. This has been my place where I can always go, and there's an audience. So, and I'm still trying to direct. So there you go. That's why I did True Noir. The Assassination of Anton Cermak. Go to truenoir.co. True Noir is 4.5 hours long. It has 25 incredible actors, most of which you've heard of. People like David Strathairn, nominated for an Academy Award. Katie Sackhoff. Michael Rosenbaum is the lead. You know, Vincent Pastore from The Sopranos. Bill Sadler, who's been in a million different things. The villain from Die Hard 2. Barry Bostwick, who was in Rocky Horror Picture Show and Megaforce. I got to work with these incredible actors. I worked with Max Allan Collins' tremendous script. I got to do that. I'm as proud of that as anything I've ever done. That's why I play the clips. You know, we're still trying to sell it. So that's what you do. You can't. My audio is low and muted. Maybe because I hit my microphone. That's not good. No. Oh shit! I must have. Sorry about that. I must have. There you go. I did. I hit something. Thanks for. Yeah, the Trek rant blew out my mic. I'm sorry you could. See, you know what? Here I go and I tell you the story of my whole career, and I ding the mic so you can't hear what I say. That, in a nutshell, is my career. That's pretty funny. Typical. Sorry about that. That's what I get. Let's see now. Where was I? Let's see. Sci-Fi Extremist says, "Do you like tokusatsu?" I do. I mean, I grew up with it, and I do. I mean, do I like it? I mean, I don't watch it religiously, but I do like things like Kamen Rider. I mean, I discovered it when my parents went to Hawaii when I was a kid in the 70s. They would go to Maui. They stayed on Maui because we grew up in Seattle, so they would go to Maui for a vacation. A lot of people would go to Hawaii. Parents would go to Hawaii. And my parents started bringing me home. I used to collect die-cast cars and planes and like Eagle transporters from a company called there was two companies. There's Dinky and Corgi in the UK, and I collected those things. Like Dinky made, this is a much more accurate interceptor from UFO, but Dinky made a die-cast interceptor from UFO, and I had that. So my parents went to Hawaii, and they brought me back they were a die-cast. They would go back, and they brought me back a lot. Whenever they would go, they'd bring me back these die-cast spaceships from tokusatsu shows from the 70s. I'd never seen them. They didn't have them in the United States, but each one would come with this big fold-out catalog that showed all the different ones that they made. And I hadn't seen Grendizer, and I hadn't seen Mazinga Z, I hadn't seen Guy King, I hadn't seen Getter Robo or Getter Robo G, but they made toys of all these things. And some of the tokusatsu characters, like I don't even remember, there was a pink, like the Pink Ranger, and her visor was a heart. I always wanted that not because I necessarily wanted the Pink Ranger, but I always thought the heart thing was cool because they were really cool. So I was buying all these things, and I hadn't seen what they were from. I didn't even know they were from animated shows. I hadn't seen any Super Robot shows. I hadn't seen Kamen Rider. I hadn't seen any of the other. I hadn't seen any Ultraman shows at this point, or Ultra 7. I hadn't seen any of that stuff. So getting this stuff was like a window. I'm like, what is this? So that's how I kind of got into that stuff. But when I finally saw it, it was a little goofy for me, but I liked it because I had already liked. I mean, I liked the Mysterians, and I liked any Japanese science fiction I saw, not just Godzilla, but like Matango, stuff like that. The Green Slime, Gorath. I mean, I would watch anything. I loved all those movies. So yeah. 1001 Johnny says, those be episodes for your last Trek rant. Coach Sipping Jamba Juice says, with where the industry is and where entertainment is going, you shouldn't be selling your screenplay to Hollywood. You should be selling to people. Well, the problem is movies are really expensive. You can't make movies by yourself. You need budgets. And one of my movies, there's a movie I want to make that's based on a novel that's set in 1999 Seattle. I call it the coming of age story of a 36-year-old. I even know the actors I want to star in it. The book came out a long time ago, but I'd love to make that. Does somebody want to see that? I don't know. It's really hard. One of the real problems that you face today in dealing with, call it the Hollywood gatekeepers, is they don't know what to make. They really don't. They're either following trends, they want IP, they don't know. And so if you're a filmmaker that makes a breakout indie film, you buy yourself some cachet. Like Zach Kreger did it the right way. He finds a producer like a Roy Lee that recognizes how great his script was. He goes and he makes Barbarian for $4.5 million. Not a big investment, but the movie makes 10 times what it cost. Means it's a big hit. And then suddenly he's on the map. People like his script. He's an auteur. He's a writer-director. His second script, Weapons, he writes that. And then he gets set up at Warner Brothers with a $12 million deal. basically because you have somebody like Roy Lee who recognizes great scripts and he can go out and make stuff happen. That's how it works, and that's the way to do it. But you have to find somebody. You have to have some way to get your script to somebody. First of all, the script has to be incredible. It's just hard. It's a really hard thing to do. But you still want to do it. I still want to do these things, and I'm always looking for angles. Tango Shalom wasn't an expensive movie, and when I came on board, it was a mess. It was never going to get finished, and I think I helped it get finished. Same was true of White Devils, and so we'll see. But yeah. Let's see. Darth Plato says, speaking of Gaza, I smell a letter. Okay, you should read one. Send it, or I'll read one. Send it to me. Apocalypse Cow says, I had an endoscopy today from a piece of chicken that got stuck while I watched you on the John Campea show talking about your dog this morning. That is a crazy coincidence. Yeah, my dog had the same thing. I can't talk about choking. That's some witchcraft right there. That is some. I'm glad you are still with us. Velian1 says, a.k.a. Paul Allan Bernardo. Paul Allan Bernardo, let's see. I've been a scriptwriter for 35 years, and I've written 25 screenplays, and a couple have been produced, and I'm working on a sci-fi one now. Yeah, see, never give up, never surrender. Never do that. This is interesting. Warren 1765 says, what is your megalopolis? I don't know what you mean by that. Like the one that I've made, or the dream project that I want to make. I would prefer not to say what my dream project is. There's like 30 projects, 30 movies that I would like to make. If I could make anything, if someone came and said, Rob, and none of them would be Star Trek, first of all. Most of them have either been. So what happens with a lot of things is through the years, a book or an IP will get purchased. Somebody will throw a lot of money up. They'll hire screenwriters, and they won't go anywhere. But those projects end up having costs associated with them. So you might have had somebody throw in $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of development costs to make this project, which means they have to be not only worth making, but then you have to pay back the money that was already spent, that they already spent developing the property, which makes a lot of these properties dead. Like, I would one day someone has to write an article or an expose, but the thing is, the studio would never let you find out what these numbers are. I want to know how much money has been spent by Warner Brothers developing the Logan's Run remake. Logan's Run, when Brian was working on Superman Returns, he had an entire previs. There was a secret previs department prevising his version of Logan's Run that Chris McQuarrie wrote. And it was funny, John Schnepp was doing the late great John Schnepp, after he made his The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, he was doing a TV series version of that when he passed away, where he was telling the story of all of these movies that never got made, like Terry Gilliam's Watchmen. I hooked him up with Brian, and we did a whole episode on the unmade Logan's Run, where some of those, I got Brian to give us some of the previs from his Logan's Run, and that, unfortunately, because John died, that show never saw the light of day, which was really sad. But I would love to know how much money has been spent on all the different directors and all the different scripts that they went through to try and do a Logan's Run remake. Sandra Stellier, is it Sandra Stellier, says your audio is low muted, Bob. I hope it's back. It seems like it's back. It is? Okay. I must have hit something as I was gesticulating. I apologize for that. G Ballard 81 says, I could hear it, but I had to max the volume out. Did not know about half of that. Well, I'm glad you got to hear it. Yeah, I mean, people don't. Like, it's so funny because you don't sit there and tell everybody your CV. When you work in the entertainment business, like I've done so many different things. I've never specialized in one. But I think that's why I'm still having a good time. I just wish I was rich. Or I just wish I was comfortable. I don't need to buy nice clothes. If I could buy genre T-shirts from Last Exit to Nowhere, nice jeans, underwear, socks, as long as I can buy action figures and Blu-rays and books, I'd be fine. And not worry about my mortgage. That would be it. That would be, and I could make stuff. That would be the perfect life. 200 Watt Studio says Green Slime has one of the greatest posters ever. Yes, it does, and Warner Archive used it on their Blu-rays, which is great. Let's see. Prady BK says, one of two. Rob, you keep defending Superman's lackluster box office by saying it'll make money from merchandising, but merch or VOD sales are never part of judging a movie's theatrical success. When Buzz Lightyear flopped, no one claimed it was fine because of toy sales and Disneyland merch sales. Box office is based on ticket sales alone, and it's okay to admit James Gunn's Superman, despite future merch revenue, wasn't a theatrical hit. Well, the movie's probably going to make over $600 million when all is said and done. I mean, how many movies get to make $600 million? Of course, they're dependent on cost. Yeah, it was not a $1 billion hit, but it made money. It was a moneymaker. I mean, I think they would, of course, have wanted it to make money. It did better than any other DC movie did. See, the funny thing is to me, talking about box office is always a misnomer, really, because it's the obvious thing that we as fans can talk about because we can point to it. But every era is different. Like if you compare apples and oranges, Superman Returns was a true disappointment because that was a $200 million movie that didn't even make $400 million worldwide at the box office. That was a disappointment. That really was, and it hurt. You know, it wasn't the right movie for the right time, and somebody earlier, Kamel didn't like it. But there have been other movies, like I don't think that a movie should be judged by its box office, because at the end of the day, and especially the DC universe, the new DC universe, remember, they've expended a lot of money on multiple projects. So, yeah, James Gunn's Superman is the beginning, but I'll bet you Supergirl outgrosses Superman, and that money's been spent. That movie is in post right now, so they're actually still spending money on it, however it's going to earn out. Lanterns, the money has already been spent. Peacemaker Season 2, the money has already been spent. So while the movie might not be as successful as some movies, were they expecting? I mean, they were fighting against an uphill tide. So I'm not defending the movie at all. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, I wish it made more money. To me, it's interesting to see where it's going to go and what's happening with it. But you know, the discourse around. Remember when, like, for instance, when Man of Steel came out, you had Christopher Nolan coming off the 3 Batman movies, 2 of which made over $1 billion. Dark Knight getting Oscar noms like Heath Ledger. When Superman Returns, when Man of Steel came out, we were at the zenith in popularity. Avengers had been made $1.5 billion. I mean, the amount of money that superhero movies were making was insane. It was totally insane. And when Man of Steel came out, it was a disappointment for the studio. They thought it was going to be a $1 billion movie. They spent $225 million on it, and it made, I think, $670 million. But at that time, with what other superhero movies were doing, it was considered a disappointment. Now, with where the DC films, it's also grossed more than all of the superhero movies that Marvel's put out for a while and DC's put out for a while. So the times change, and you have to take into consideration when a movie comes out and what's happening when you're judging its box office success. So, and it's not to do, but you also have to remember that movies are an ongoing business. I mean, when it comes to things like, they're not, that's why just judging a movie, look, if you go back to the home video era, most movies made way more money on home video than they did theatrically. That's why that's why home video is in the early 80s, and that's why the DVD business, if you watch Matt Damon on Hot Ones talk about what the DVD business did for movies and independent movies, DVDs were so cheap to make and the markup on them was so huge that there was a lot of money that was being made on ancillary markets. I mean, you know, when you had a Disney movie, for instance, an animated film like A Little Mermaid or something, it might sell 20 million copies on. It added hundreds of millions of dollars to the box office to the take in home video. That doesn't even happen anymore. So you always used to. I mean, the box office, the way we rate, nobody clocks any of the other amount of money a movie makes. But movies can still have, like, for instance, how much. I'll give you an example. In 2019, when Netflix paid $100 million to run Friends for one more year, $100 million. Friends was done. I mean, it got syndication money, and then someone comes along and says, "I'll give you $100 million to run Friends for another for 1 year." Where does that money get counted? I mean, you don't really hear about it, but that's $100 million something made out of the blue because somebody wanted to use it. Then there's licensing fees that HBO Max has to pay. So movies are an ongoing concern, especially if they're tied to other. Now, I'm not saying that Superman is still. Did they want it to make more money? Yeah, everybody wants to make $1 billion, but it's still in theaters. And I think if it earns over $600 million, I'll lose a bet if it doesn't earn more than $670 million. Yeah, I mean, the way we talk about movie box office now is kind of a little silly because there's a lot we just don't know about what went on. We don't know what are the brand deals that the studio makes. We don't know how much the studio overhead cost. What is Warner Brothers charging? What is DC Studios overhead? We don't see that as a line item, but it's definitely got to pay for the studio. So there's a lot of things that we don't know. I just try and keep it up and so people understand that box office is just one part of the story. It's always been just one part of the story, really. Let's see. Well, like I said, Rob, anytime you go on a Star Trek rant, I'll excuse letters. I'll recommend an episode of Ultraman, and I'll keep repeating the recommendations till I hear you've watched them. But there's so many things I have to watch before Ultraman to keep up with everything. Major Chai Chai says, White Devil's still coming out in August. I wish. We're doing the sound mix is being revised. So much for my plans for South African National Women's Day. But yeah, the sound mix is being changed. Warren1765 says, "You've done so much experience. You're perfectly situated to make something and make a few million or more. Don't give up. Make it happen." Oh, I'm not. I'm trying to do just that. Look, we have a true noir movie script based on Max Allan Collins dying in the post-war world. I'm working on getting that made. There's always something to work on. You know, so don't worry. I'm gonna Kate Bush the rest of my life. Don't give up, 'cause you have friends. That's it. You can't give up. I mean, what are you gonna do? And I'm just gonna keep going. Ridley Scott, his guy's gonna be pushing 90 making movies. Clint Eastwood's in his 90s making movies. You don't have to give up. So don't worry. 1001 Johnny says, side note, I discovered James Cagney and Pat O'Brien in Angels with Dirty Faces. That's a great movie. That film was the basis for one of my very favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. The acting by O'Brien and Cagney at the end. Whoever said grown men don't cry? Well, at least you're delving into the classics. Angels with Dirty Faces is one of the greats. It's one of the great movies of all time. B Gaming 199 says, do you think Blockbusters could ever return as a rental app? Many people like me don't really commit to monthly streaming, but I like to rent sometimes. Well, that's kind of what VOD is. You can get video on demand or download something or buy something to rent it. So you could certainly do that. And I could see that. So I think you can get things. It's definitely a revenue stream, G Billard 81 says Superman is the fourth highest grossing superhero movie from 2023 till 2025, and it's not over yet. So we shall see. By the way, I didn't say Warner 1765 said you've done so much That was a $20 super chat. That was very generous of you. And the Grady BK, also, those are great super chats. Thank you very much about defending Superman. I mean, I'm not defending Superman's. I want to be clear on that. I'm not defending its lackluster box office. I'm trying to make sure everybody, people keep comparing it to other movies. And the most important thing is to compare it to the time in which it's coming out and where was DC. Like if it's funny because if you go back and you look at how much Thor, how much Iron Man 1 made when they started the MCU, made $500 million. Superman is going to outgross what Iron Man made as the very first MCU movie. You have to think of Superman as the dawn of a new era, of a brand new studio. DC Studios had never had. It's the first feature film that ever came out from DC Studios. First one. And it made, like, it's closing in on $600 million. It'll be close to $600 million, I think, after this weekend. That is a good result. Even it doesn't matter how much it even cost. It's a good result as a first movie from a first studio. You have to remember that, especially if you look at what all the other DC movies have grossed since. I mean, Joker was an outlier. Joker was $1 billion movie. Joker was one of the most successful movies ever made at a $65 million spend. But then Joker 2 came out and destroyed all that profit. So the Joker franchise, since they made 2 movies, now I guess you have to judge them together. I mean, yeah, Joker 1 can always say on a $65 million spend, you made $1 billion. That was hugely successful. But then you go and you make Joker Folie à Deux for $200 million. That was a disaster. I like that movie, though. I mean, that movie's, people are going to look back on it in 20 years ago. How the hell did they slip that one past the studio? It's not like that they phoned that movie in. It might not have been the right movie, but they didn't phone it in. And so it's an interesting parallel. Aquaman, $1 billion movie. Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, not a $1 billion movie. You know, but it's the way we judge these movies. We're looking at them like it's a foot race or something. Look what came in first. But look where DC was before Superman came out and what they're expecting of it. And I'm willing to bet that Supergirl, if Supergirl is good, and based on the Tom King comic series, Woman of Tomorrow, I think it's going to be very interesting. And with I think when people watch, look, Superman, James Gunn's Superman was, people forget too, it's a wacky movie. It's almost like an independent comedy. It's like something we hadn't seen before. It all totally goes against the grain, whether people like it or not. A lot of people don't like it. So it's an auteurist vision that not everybody digs. So it's a movie that is not beloved by everyone either. And that's another thing, you know. And I think that has to be remembered. So, but remember, movies are an ongoing business. Their theatrical run is not the only time they're going to earn money. And they continue to earn money for their lifetime. So, and if you've made friends, it'll bring in $1 million for you, or $100 million when you least expect it. 1001 Johnny says, think of Ultraman like Star Trek or The Twilight Zone, Rob. You only need to understand the premise to watch one episode. Oh, I know. G. Ballard, is it Ballard? 81 says, I'm really excited about Clayface, especially after the Penguin and now Superman. My daughter is excited for Supergirl. My son is excited for Lanterns after seeing Superman. Yeah. I mean, what they're doing is it's a universe, and this is money that's already been spent. I'm excited for Supergirl. I think that she's going to kill it, and that story is really interesting. And Lanterns, I have really high hopes for that. I can't wait to see Lanterns. And I think Batman 2, The Batman 2, after coming off of Batman or The Batman and Penguin, they're in a strong position, I think. I have a couple more letters I wanted to read. Let's see. What. You know what? I'm going to save these two because they're related. They're not really related to what I'm talking about now. I think I will wrap the show up. It's been going on for 2 hours. You guys have been great. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank everybody for... 1001 Johnny says, I loved Folie myself like a puff of tobacco. Yeah, I mean, again, it's... Okay, when you see Joker 2, it's not the movie anybody who liked Joker wanted to see, which is its problem. So when you remove that film out of the expectations of the time in which people made it, in 10 or 20 years, will that film be looked upon the same way? That's why I like seeing, when people go back and they watch movies now from 40 years ago, there's no expectations. People are just watching movies for their own sake, and they're not bringing with them any kind of baggage. I mean, right now, I'm surprised at how many people prejudge films before they've even seen them. Like, I've been excited for movies. I've found myself really having an enjoyable time beginning in January with Companion. It was a movie I'd read the script for, and I thought the film was, compared to the script, was perfectly executed. Weapons and Companion were both movies that the directors completely fulfilled the vision of the scripts that they had written. And they worked. They knew what they were doing. They tightly controlled those films. And, Companion was not made with a huge amount of money. And what was brilliant about that film is most of it took place in that house, and they found the perfect setting to shoot that movie. Totally cinematic, but controlled. That was a brilliant piece of producing, I thought. And I'm sure Weapons was the same way. They found a neighborhood. They found that little. I don't know where they shot it, but they're like, okay, it was. Weapons and Companion are great examples of responsible studio filmmaking. And by the way, so is Final Destination: Bloodlines. They found great places. I mean, look, the Space Needle in Final Destination: Bloodlines looks nothing like the Space Needle. It doesn't. They don't even have any shots of where it actually is located in Seattle because it would have been too difficult. I thought it was fine the way they did it. It didn't bother me, and I'm from Seattle. And I've been to the Space Needle 1,000 times, but it didn't bother me. But those three movies were all responsibly produced. The people that made them knew what they were doing. They didn't profligate spend. And I think that the studio would be happy with how, aside from Companion, which again should have made $50 million, I think the studio was happy at least with how the films were produced and how they ended up turning out. And that's all you can ask. And that's why they greenlit Final Destination Bloodlines 2 or Final Destination 7 or 8 or whatever. Yeah, so that's good. I mean, this is all good for the business. A business that has been unhealthy for a while. If studios can make money, I mean, $90 million was the reported budget of Sinners, and how much did it end up making for an auteurist horror movie? I mean, that's a good number. And you know what? Wouldn't you rather see? I mean, if you take as a whole, if you take Companion and if you take Sinners and you take Weapons, those are all brand new IPs. Wouldn't you rather have those kinds of experiences at the movie theater? I mean, studios need IPs to run, which I totally understand. But they also need new films. I mean, hell, when we made I Wish Warner Premiere would come back, that's the thing that I would really want to do. If somebody asked me what I would want to do, Warner Premiere should bring back the Warner Premiere label. And now that they know that they're, and Hills on Red, all movies, genre films made for, let's give it a little higher ceiling, $6 million and under. And you do what Blumhouse did. You find great scripts. That's the key. It's really difficult to find great scripts, and it's even more difficult to find great low-budget scripts. But you find people like myself who am tapped into I could go to every single horror filmmaker I know with a track record, and they would kill to make movies for $4 and $5 million. And the thing is, if they're good enough, you release them theatrically, like Blumhouse would do. And if not, they go direct to Max, HBO Max. And what you're doing is you can incubate new talent. You find the new Zach Kreger, you find the new whomever, what A24 is doing, but you're a distribution. You're already Warner Brothers, so the movies you're going to make are going to wind up, and you find people like myself, and the people that I would bring in and hire would be the best people in the business to do this. And then you have a film company where you're making 3 or 4 movies a year at a $6 million budget, and you see what you come up with. And, Warner Brothers shut down Warner Premiere, shut down those originals for a while. Then they brought it back and they did things like the new House Party, or they did Deep Blue Sea 2 and 3. But they were leaning back on their own tentpole properties when they should not do that. They should do original films. And I would throw up The Hills Run Red as an example. We made that for Warner Premiere. We made it for a price. We shot it in Bulgaria. It turned out the way it was supposed to turn out. And why not do more of that? That's what I would do. And I've already done it. They can hire us again. So yeah. What more do you want? But I think I'm done. Everybody. Now, everybody knows that tomorrow we're doing Let's Get Physical Media tomorrow on Saturday, because Sunday I'm driving to Vegas and I'm going to do a panel at Trek to Vegas. I'm going to be at the big Star Trek con. I'm going to be in the last panel at the Inglorious Treksperts track on Sunday evening. So, hey, if you're a writer of Star Trek and you're out there, you can come throw a drink in my face. And I'll say, if you wrote better, I would talk about your show in a better light. But there you go. So, anyway, on that note, thanks everybody for being here. I want to thank everybody for generously supporting this channel via super chats and tips and memberships. And we'll get back to doing a member call next week. Roberto Suarez, who helps me with the member calls, took his son Felix, and they are in Japan, which is very cool. So, and I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson and Darth Plato and all the other moderating staff and all the other members of the Post-Geek Singularity. Thank you, and join me in Dietz tomorrow, and I think we're going to do a Midnight Metal tomorrow night. Dave Parker called me and wanted to do a Midnight Metal. So join us tomorrow for Let's Get Physical Media. And everyone go see Weapons, and write down there in the comments what you thought. And on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And sorry about the low volume halfway through the show. What a fucking bummer. Anyway, have a better night.